But that is the real picture that we're looking at with regards to this investment in Foxconn. Do we want to take this risk? Well, everybody at the top of the chain is saying, you know, absolutely, this is great. This is the greatest thing that's come before us.
I'm concerned, George. Good morning. Welcome to Talking Racine. Mr. George Myers and I are here today. We're going to try to explain one small part of the Foxconn phenomenon. And that part is going to be that which relates to Racine County and specifically, or more specifically, Mount Pleasant.
That's correct. And particularly, we're not going to talk about the state this time, right?
Oh, God, no.
We're going to leave that off. That's for another program. This is going to be with regards just to county and the village of Mount Pleasant.
Now, Foxconn, as you know, is also called Han Hai in China. Foxconn is like the American name. It's chaired by Mr. Terry Gu, who is also 89% owner of a company called, or a holding company called SIO. So both of those are involved in this, what's called the Foxconn bargain or deal or whatever the dickens it is. And we're going to focus primarily on Mount Pleasant tonight, this morning, whatever time it is. And they're going to be bonding for their portion of this program, $764 million.
Right.
Did I read that right, George?
$764 million.
And that's on top of, they already owe, they've got a debt of 28
They have a
million?
debt of about $28 million. So this is not coming, the taxpayers are not coming up with this kind of money, the taxpayers of Mount Pleasant. This is going to be borrowed money. This will be bonded money.
But in total they'll owe 792 if you live in Mount Pleasant by the time this is full blown and on the way. Okay. Now it starts out next year, correct?
Yeah,
now we've got a graph here. You did a beautiful job with this graph.
Yeah. This is really good. Now we have a bottom line here which represents about 30 years of time. All right? Starting with 2018 and going out to 2048, 2050. And up this line is the amount of money spent. It also represents the amount of money received. So it counts two things: amount of money spent by the municipality and the amount of money received. Now, the first step of this starts right here at $60 million in 2018. That's the $60 million that SIO is putting into the treasury at Mount Pleasant. Dave DeGroot has announced that, and he's announced it several times, that this is money that's actually going to arrive, and I guess it's December 15th.
Okay.
So it actually goes into the coffers of the municipality. In addition to that, however, is this $764 million that's going to be spent during 2018. Now, we've kind of roughed it out as how we think it's going to get spent. It's going to get spent, but it's not all going to get spent in the first year. It's going to get spent in multiple years. But we've guessed that in the first year, there's going to be three items. One is $168 million for land purchasing. Obviously, the land's going to have to be bought before we start building on things. The second thing we put in there is $100 million for tax incremental district financing. Now, this is money that's actually being given to Terry Gu over there. We're not quite sure what this is other than cash. You know, he apparently, and it was an important part of the project.
In fact, they said the project isn't going to go unless that $100 million is in there.
All right, well, and so they put $60 million in and we're immediately giving them $100 million. Well, we're not doing it immediately. I'm not sure when that gets spent. But first the $60 million goes in, then $100 million will go to him, and then I guess from that point on, SIO will also start doing investments themselves.
Well, each one of these red dots represents a level of borrowing, correct?
Right. And this first dot represents the three things. It's the $168 million for property acquisition. It's $100 million for this TID money that goes over to Terry Gu, and the other $5 million is for fiber optic lines. We figured that has to get in there somewhere. That's a minor amount, but that's this first total here, which is about $270 million. It's right in this area here. Then the next year, there's $175 million for financing the package, to work out the financing for it. So we've included that here, and that's represented approximately by that dot there. And this is in the second year. Now another thing happens at the end, we're putting in there at the end of this second year, is that there's going to be $31 million come in the form of money from the district. Now, I don't want to get
from the TID, right?
From the TID,
tax, yeah.
from the tax incremental district.
That's
in other words,
taxes paid.
That's the taxes that they would have paid, that the Foxconn would have paid, but because it's a tax incremental district, it goes back into the project here, which means at least though it's a recovery of some of that money that's been spent.
So instead of being taxes, it's actually used to pay down the debt.
Right, exactly.
Right.
That's what it means by going back into the TID. Now, we've done this for each year. Each one of these represent an increase of $31 million total that's been invested for the next 30 years, actually 32 years. And then so that's what this blue line is. That's just $31 million a year. We're not sure how much it's going to be, but that's what the anticipation is, and that shows how much money comes in to pay for this money that's being spent. Now, as you can see, in the third year, we're going to have to do something in water and wastewater. That's 160 million of that. Then the next year is 116 million for public safety and police upgrades. I guess they're concerned about all this activity. They're going to need extra police in there. And the next year after that, there's, well, actually, is $28 million for contingency. This is just in case we need to spend money. And that finishes out the first 5 years, which gets you up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Now, why is it going up a little bit even after that? That's because there's interest on the bonds. And each one of these years, once you start borrowing money, your interest rate is going to go up.
So we've got this calculated at what?
2.5%.
2.5%, which is, it's pretty average for a bond. That's
pretty darn good. That's AAA bond rating. And if they can keep their AAA rating going into all this debt, that'll be a very, very good trick as far as I know. That's another thing that could really change this curve. If it gets up to 3 or 4 or 5%, then it's going to go a lot higher. Now, at the end of 30 years, that's where the paths finally cross. So it's a 30-year point where this TID district actually, the money coming in actually pays for all the debt that the city has incurred. In the meantime, though, here is the amount of debt that is incurred. And this is the difference between this red dot up here and this blue dot down here. And 5 years from now, it shows a debt of about $620 million.
That's how much is still owed by Mount Pleasant.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's the risk that Mount Pleasant faces. As long as everything continues along, we go out to 10 years and it's down to $539 million. So as the years go on, the debt decreases. But at this year here, let's say $539 million, now we say, well, I mean, suppose Foxconn runs out of steam, or customers go bad, or
some more technology comes along and they're not using flat screens anymore, so the factory's obsolete. That's right. A possibility.
Yeah, the way technology goes these days, we don't even know how long these liquid display screens are going to be actually being used. So let's just take an example here. If something like that occurs, now what happens? Where is this municipality sitting? Well, Terry Gu has guaranteed $135 million.
So you're using this as a projection. If things go south in 2028, there'll be $539 million of debt out there.
That's right. But Terry Gu is he's going to pay 135 of it.
135.
He's guaranteeing $135 million to the municipality should anything go wrong. So that still leaves them on the hook for $400 million.
$400 million. But the state is...
The state is guaranteeing 40%. So if we're down to 400 million, that means the state's going to chip in $160 million. Of course, the people up in La Crosse and Superior, they're going to love that.
Yeah.
But at any rate, that's 140. That still leaves the county and the city, whoever, the municipality, Mount Pleasant, with $240 million, which is a lot to them, because right now their debts.
240 million? That's only, it's not even a quarter of a billion.
Yeah.
24% of $1 billion.
So, but the point is that's their risk at this point. And the further out you go, I think your biggest risk is the technology risk. That suddenly this all becomes obsolete. But the other one is that market factors change or whatever changes. Suddenly Foxconn isn't the behemoth that it was. You know, we saw it with the automotive industry. Some of the changes in those. We saw what happened to Zenith. You know, there's big corporations that go out for various reasons. But that is the real picture that we're looking at with regards to this investment in Foxconn. Do we want to take this risk? Well, everybody at the top of the chain is saying, you know, absolutely, this is great. This is the greatest thing that's come before us.
I'm concerned, George. I mean, we're talking about 32 years here. I'm 71. 32 years, I'll be 103 years old. I'm never going to see this thing paid off, personally.
Your enemies would wish that.
And you'll probably be in the ground before me, I mean, realistically speaking, right? I mean, you got a couple of years.
I'd like to be 110.
110? Well, you eat a lot of yogurt and stuff. I do too. But yeah. But anyway, yeah, that's a long time for to owe that amount of money. That's 30-year mortgage of $764 million.
Okay, well that's what it looks like, and there's your risk. It's right in this area here that your risk sits, and the question is what kind of a risk is it, and how good is it? And I don't think it's just this is the end to all ends. I think it takes more consideration than that.
Than what we've seen?
Yeah.
Well, hi, welcome back. We're in the studio now, and we're joined by Mr. Jim Spodek, our technician and producer. He was behind the camera when George and I were doing that. That's not really a PowerPoint, is it?
Not quite.
It wasn't really a whiteboard because it was kind of like paper bag color. But the demonstration...
A couple old guys trying to explain what the heck's going on with this, with this fiasco in Mount Pleasant. You know, I just like to quick summarize that chart. The part in the middle is the amount that the municipality is risking, and it maxes out at about $637 million, which is in about year 4. It grows up to year 4. That's the maximum
exposure, yeah.
Maximum exposure, and then it decreases out for the next 40.
Well, it should actually be more than that, because if there's, well, no, because they're going in incrementally, aren't they?
That's right.
But it's an awful lot of money. I mean, our bottom line is it's a tremendous amount of money.
Yeah,
I mean,
that is, I thought, was a very good picture of what the risk is. We talked about it, 31 million coming in here, 600 million going out there, without really seeing what that means, and you get lost in the figures.
Yeah.
And as we developed the chart, then we could see it and thought, wow, this is really good. Let's show this to our viewing.
Scare the hell out of some other people. You know, why should we be the only ones that are worried about this stuff?
You can see what there's a risk there, and there's the amount of the risk, and I think the biggest thing that risks it, the biggest danger to it, is actually the technological change.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of that stuff is covered in Belt Magazine here. Belt Magazine is about the Rust Belt, issues that affect the Rust Belt, which is where we're located here in Racine, Wisconsin. We're right in the middle of the Rust Belt. And they discuss this whole Foxconn phenomenon. And the guys that wrote these articles are pretty bright. These are guys that are watching this industry.
Right.
You know, they know a lot more about it than any of us in the state of Wisconsin do. Particularly the people that are negotiating this whole thing on our behalf. And now there were several other states that looked at this. It was North Carolina, Ohio, and Michigan.
Right.
And they all
Right.
passed on it.
We are not
eventually.
we are not the
Right.
only people that have been approached with this idea from SIO Corporation.
Now, Scott Walker likes to pretend, he likes to create the image that we are the winners in this. We won the bidding process. Well, the whole thing, according to this article, it kind of happened sort of as a response to the Trump threat that he was going to impose a 40% tariff on all goods imported into the United States. So this guy from Asia, from Taiwan, this Terry Gu, he's a shrewd Asian businessman, and believe me, they function in the business world in an entirely different way than American businessmen are accustomed to.
Yeah, that's an interesting aspect on the philosophy of the Chinese. Go ahead.
They seem to, when they sign a contract, that's just the beginning of the negotiations. Throughout the life of the contract, you're continually making adjustments. Things come up that cause you to say, well, listen, we can't do that anymore. We're going to do this instead. So it's an ongoing negotiation. This thing is not at all cut and dried. Even though the ink is on the paper and promises have been made and so on and so forth, that is not the way these negotiations go in that part of the world. And now they're over in this part of the world. So it's a cultural difference that Mr. Walker is probably not at all aware of. At least that's what the people who are writing about this seem to believe. And I'm pretty convinced he doesn't know either. We were talking before about people in elected offices and how they seem to get dumber once they get in office, and that they don't start out all that bright to begin with, a large number of them. And it seems like I was of the opinion that you get into office and all of a sudden you're there and you think, oh my God, I don't really know what's going on here. I better look around and watch these other people. They've been here a while. They probably know the ropes. And so the new guy is watching the people that have been there before, who themselves don't really know what's going on. Everybody's in over their head, and
This is a perfect example of being in over your head.
yeah,
I think you're way over their head.
Yeah, it should be pointed out that just because a person gets elected to office doesn't make them smart. You're not elected smart. You're elected because you had a good presentation and you didn't turn people off or whatever.
Yeah, you're like a popularity
you could
contest.
make good promises,
Yeah.
but it didn't make you smart. And what you're seeing in on these stages with these politicians, yes, they're up there pretty high. They got fortunately a lot of power, but they're not any smarter than the rest of us.
well, they're like a political product. They're a commodity.
It's kind of like that. And
Well, it's all advertising. I mean, when television came into the political process, and I think the first time that really happened was in the 1960 election between Kennedy and Nixon.
That's right.
And that's the first time that television really had an impact on political
That's
campaigns.
where politicians learn to put makeup on.
Right.
Yeah.
But I want to get to one thing here. I want to just kind of jump back to the beginning. You touched on it a little bit. When Trump was either elected or before he was elected, he talked about a 40% or 45% tariff that he was going to put on. Now if he was going to believe it or not or whatever, but it did spark the Foxconn Terry Gu to basically run come to the States, because 54% of Foxconn, or not actually, but Han Hai, 54% of their revenues come from Apple. So obviously, if there's going to be a tariff, they want a company in the United States. So he puts out a proposal to the states that I've got a company that is worth that I will build. It'll be $1 billion and 2,000 employees, and that's where Michigan, Ohio.
That's how it started out. 2,000 employees.
2,000 employees and $1 billion. It actually, by the time it gets morphed into Wisconsin, it's 13,000 employees and $10 billion, because of obviously the employees go up and.
Well, Walker needed more jobs.
That's it's more of a political move, I believe, than I think now that these numbers are starting to show up, and we're starting to see a little bit of the contracts, because even these supervisors and people that are signing these contracts, I really don't believe they actually know what is actually in that contract. And
well, I don't think Terry Gu was at all scared by that 40 or 45% tariff. I think he looked at that and went, how can I take advantage of that?
Right. Well, and
this is a change in the business landscape, and what can I do to take advantage of it? And I think he's found the.
So, but one of the things that I kind of follow
is
there's 2,000 employees. Now he's actually talking about putting 2,000 employees to work, and obviously, that was initially what he was going to do. I don't think you're ever going to see 13,000 employees because these LCD screens, these factories, they don't produce that huge amount of people for just producing the screen. There's a lot of other things that go on, and now there's what they call web screens, and Corning has come out with some different things. So these LCDs are on the way out, and we can go into that if you want to, but.
Well, I think it's important. What was a company that is already
Corning.
Corning is
Glass,
already
yeah.
looking at a new method of TV that replaces the LCDs.
Right.
And they've already kind of discarded the idea. They're not interested in going into it. And here we are looking at spending billions of dollars to build something that is already maybe outmoded.
Yeah.
So the risk of that 500 and or 637 $1 million to the municipality of Mount Pleasant is suddenly getting bigger. I mean, it's
Yeah.
getting more. It's
getting
for a while,
scarier,
yeah,
right?
for a while it looked like, okay, well, there's some risk. There's always some risk, but now it's starting to really look risky when there's a big company that we know of is already looking at a new.
Well, Corning would be the glass supplier for the LCD screens.
Uh-huh.
That would be their contribution, but they are not going to build a plant to produce glass for this because they don't think that it's viable. The profit margin on LCDs has gone way down. The market is just about saturated with them. And there are new technologies that are already well, I don't know if they're in production, but they're already designed and they're already viable. And it's stuff like, it's like a fabric, you paste it onto something and you've got a TV screen.
Yeah, very flexible. I mean, it's new technology.
Yeah, it's
and
amazing
things are going
stuff.
to change. And we're going to wait around for 30 years or 35 years to get.
I can't believe
700
something like this is going to last 35 years.
I-
There's got to be changes.
Here's the other thing. SIO, which is the holding company, that
For Terry Gould.
It's not Foxconn. That is not the company that is putting up these.
This is like at Machinery Row,
Exactly.
where we had Rodney Blackwell had a lot of money someplace, but when he went to Machinery Row, he built an LLC specifically for Machinery Row.
Right.
All right. So if anything went bad with Machinery Row, it didn't affect the rest of his empire. And Terry Goo's got the same type of thing
It's
going.
called
We're not bringing
Holdings.
this multi-billion-dollar company in here
Right.
that's putting this in. No, this is SIO, which is based out of.
The Cayman Islands.
What do you think about that? No,
We're
it's based out of
SOL.
Cayman Islands. Yeah,
And he's
the
guaranteeing
tax
100
haven.
Yeah.
The tax haven. The
Yeah.
tax. I mean,
Turks and Caicos Islands.
I mean,
Yeah.
when I saw Cayman Islands, and I mean, literally, that is where he is based. SIO is based out
it's
of.
not Taiwan even.
Yeah.
You guys know what a caiman is, right?
Well, Cayman's
No,
it's
I-
a lizard, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a gigantic lizard.
Yeah.
It's like an alligator.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of appropriate that a dinosaur-like.
You don't have to say that
predator.
everything's going to just crash because of that, but boy, there's some real red flags that have gone
Yeah.
up. And one of the things that I think happened here is so desperate for jobs, so desperate for these political. And when you said it right from the beginning, George, when you see all these politicians and a businessman there, there's
Yeah.
something going on
that
here.
bothered
It's
me.
scary.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think what happened here is, they're so desperate for the jobs, they come in, they make this big.
And they're
show.
desperate for jobs because they made promise for jobs.
Exactly.
And
They make
they don't
promises
know
and
they
can't
don't know
fulfill.
how to build, or to put out a city that allows jobs to come in. They have all these promises for jobs and don't do a darn thing about it. And then suddenly Foxconn comes along, and wow, here's my
the thing is about
salvation.
George. They've got I think they've got 9 companies in China. They got Taiwan. They've got a few other parts of the world. This is an international company. They have international negotiators. They come to Racine, Wisconsin, and they are negotiating with Mount Pleasant. And I know that we could call attorneys. He's a great attorney, but what do we call out the back door and hey, we got those international people here. Get off the tractor and come on in and negotiate. I don't believe they brought anybody in that really should have analyzed this from the top down. And I think WEDC in Wisconsin, which was really Walker's quasi contributing. He would get contributions, and those miracle would happen, and they would get loans from this.
Yeah.
And I believe
WEDC does not have a good track record.
not a track record at all.
I can't picture them being your last resort for an analysis of a deal
Well,
like this.
they do their own analysis, George, and this is where all these numbers are
They're
coming
just another
out of.
bureaucracy.
Their
as far
own
as I'm
numbers.
concerned. Yeah.
They're coming with their own numbers.
Yeah.
And then when they talk about the supply chain, Foxconn or Terry Gou put that together, paid for the supply chain to say, well, this is all going to happen.
Well,
By the
Terry
way,
Gou and his team coming into Wisconsin negotiate with the Walker team. That's like the Chicago Bears showing up at a Pop Warner game and saying, you know, hey, you guys want a scrimmage?
Yeah.
And what did this Lawrence Toback, the Belt Magazine, talk about their philosophy of winners and losers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that in the United States we think of win-win. You know, both sides can win. You get together, deal, and both sides can win. Not in China. They think one side's going to win, and the other side's going to lose.
Yeah, you got a winner and a loser.
That's right.
That's
and
it.
if that's their philosophy, we could be in a lot more trouble than we think.
I mean, this really has to be looked at. I mean, I think the citizens of Mount Pleasant, we're talking about a huge risk. Machinery Row was bad, and that ended up with, you know, $4.5 million. That's going to end up $15 million to the citizens of Racine. That's chicken feed compared to what this kind of money could, crippling money.
Yeah. Well, I think what we ought to do before we get too lengthy here is we ought to get on the arena project here in Racine.
Yeah, the Foxconn, we have
got
to leave
other
it there.
shows.
Yeah.
You know,
We're
we
gonna-
set
we're
it
gonna
up
do
what
more
we're
on
looking at,
Yeah.
and we got the whole state scene yet to look at. But you see, I hope you see more clearly just what's going on, at least with regards to Mount Pleasant and Racine County and Foxconn.
And I'll tell you what, if you feel comfortable with this, you know, if you know something that we don't know, get in touch with us.
Yeah,
you know, we'd be happy to talk to you.
We're gathering information all the time. It
Yeah,
keeps changing.
but from what we've seen so far, it's a little bit scary. And on a more local basis, like I said, the arena project
the arena thing, that's coming
has
up
been scary.
like very quickly.
And it looks like possibly tomorrow, or, well, it would be today as we're talking to you.
Monday.
The
Yep.
5th.
Tonight, Monday, or tomorrow at the council meeting, the arena project could finally go down. None of the 10 milestones that they wanted to achieve in order to vote this thing to continue, I don't know that any of them have been reached. What have they got?
Well, they've had a TID district. They've established a TID district. The Rio Racine was complacent enough, and they're going to give them the room tax.
I don't think they are.
No, I think that's an
they're
issue.
holding back on that.
Yeah, they don't
think
want to
that's
do
an issue.
that. I mean, they in fact they said, who came up with that idea? That's financing that they're dependent upon.
Well, the
That hotel
main
tax.
ones, the real heavy ones, are the private ag sector developer to build a hotel.
Right, and that's
Haven't heard about that.
Right. Well, a miracle-
Unless he pops up
a
tonight.
miracle could appear this evening.
And remember, when this thing first came across the table, after it was built, at the time we were looking at an investor coming and building it, but even once it was built, it was going to cost the taxpayers of Racine $300,000 to $500,000 per year just to run it.
Well, the big
Right.
thing right now is that
And
Mayor Mason has vetoed the project,
Right?
and tonight the discussion is going to be, are there enough votes to override that veto, and do they want to override that veto? Have they achieved enough of these 10 to encourage them to continue on with this process?
Right.
Or are they going to say, okay, look, enough people don't want this, the mayor has vetoed it, we're gonna can it. You know?
Right.
It might come back at some future time. And none of us are really opposed to that, as long as it's not being done on the backs of the taxpayers.
Right.
You know.
And I just want to relate this back to Machinery Row and to this Foxconn SIO Holdings. Again, taxpayers, Machinery Row, and all that's now they're going to knock the buildings down. These valuable buildings that were worth $9 million in tax credits are now going to tumble to the ground at $6.5 million.
I hope they don't do that. I
we're
really
talking
hope they
all
don't do that.
taxpayer money. Now we're talking probably about $15 million in taxpayer money that was just blown. Then you go to the arena here. Now that again was going to be a private developer, and that would have been about $45 million of taxpayer money again.
How much have they spent so far? There's the
They're probably about
$600,000 on the
They're probably
study.
$1.5 million by the
It's
time.
been studies and
Yeah.
slideshows and stuff
Yeah,
like
I
that.
mean, if you dig into that, I'm sure it's considerable.
Well,
amount
not
of
to
money.
mention the lost staff time and,
Oh.
and the lost
Absolutely.
creative energy that's been invested in this, that's lost. It could have been used for something else.
But then you go to Foxconn or to SIO Holdings, now you're talking $700 million of taxpayer money. It's got to stop. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that
it can bankrupt a community.
It can. It really can.
That's the problem. I
And I don't see
there's genuine financial peril on the horizon.
I just see our elected officials heading up the wrong road. They got to stop this, go back to the basics of operating and running a city or running a village. That's the important part of it. That's what they're elected to do. They're not elected to be developers. They're not elected to create these jobs. They're elected to create a great environment so people come to this community so they grow and prosper.
That's what they should be doing.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
right.
but they would argue that an arena, blah, 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 so on and so forth, is what creates the environment that attracts people in. But and they
Safe
talk about
streets, clean
they
neighborhoods.
talk about being competitive on the world stage.
Yeah, wow.
Which means that everybody's doing all this stuff to be competing for the same audience. Now, look at Miller Park. Every major league city just about has built a new stadium or done tremendous upgrades on what they have. And they all are promised that this is going to really improve the team. This is going to make us competitive. People get the idea, we're going to be in the World Series soon, and we'll probably win because we got a new stadium. Well, there's only one team, one city that wins that every year. And yet all of these various municipalities around North America are investing hundreds of millions of dollars into that dream. It's ridiculous. It's just a dog chasing
And the
its tail.
studies have shown, when they've gone back to these cities that have been made these big promises, and they found that it simply doesn't come true. The money that comes in as a result of these stadiums is not covering the cost and the amount people have spent. Every
None
one
of
of them
this
is a losing proposition.
Every one
Yeah.
of these loses.
Yeah.
And it's not money that comes in
And
from
these
outside.
are the big stadiums.
Right.
These
Yeah.
are the professional ones, not the little one that we're talking about now. We're going to bring in a D League or some type of a hockey team. So that is a loss. And what the council had agreed upon, if they would meet these 10 milestones. These were milestones. These weren't just ideas.
Right.
I'm surprised they couldn't even get the room tax out of it.
No, the room tax not coming.
But the really big ones, to have someone who's going to put a hotel in there, and the other big one where they're going to have somebody that's going to cover $365,000 a year in that operational cost. Now, those are some big money things, and they're not going to be anywhere close to those, and so they should be defeating it tonight. We at least should decide to defeat it tonight and actually do it tomorrow. And we need to hold their feet to the fire and insist that they do. And anyone that doesn't on that council, we want to know who it is. And the odd number people, those in odd number districts, are in a lot of trouble because they're circulating nomination papers right now for people that are going to run for those offices.
So if you're concerned, and you know where City Hall is, come on down.
Yeah.
Starts at what, 7 o'clock tonight?
That's the typical time.
So
I would
yeah.
check that.
7, yeah.
Some of these special
Check it,
meetings.
though.
Today's Monday, December
4th.
4th?
Yeah.
4th, right?
Fourth.
Tuesday
right.
5th.
Monday,
Tuesday
December
is the
4th.
5th. Tuesday is the regular meeting.
7
with a
o'clock.
special meeting tonight on the 4th.
City Hall, yeah. Show up if you're concerned.
Is there anything else we need to cover? We
think that's
wanted
it.
to get the arena in. Okay, that was.
I think
that
we
was
got it done, gentlemen.
Yeah, okay.
I think we've done a good job. So, say good morning.
Exciting times, folks. Have a fun Monday.
Have a great day. Hopefully we'll see you tonight at City Hall.